Hello and welcome back. Now winter's finally starting to settle in, so I won't be doing any work on the allotment, but instead I will be cooking a delicious sausage and butterbean casserole with some freshly picked kale in the shed just to warm me up a little bit. I just love winter, but I think my favourite thing about this season is when you've been working outside in the cold all morning or all afternoon to come into the house or into the shed in this case and to tuck into a delicious hot dinner. Now today I will be cooking a sausage and butterbean casserole, which just so happens to be my favourite recipe ever. It's so delicious. It's so easy to make, it's so simple. So I'll be showing you all how to cook that today. And I'll also be adding in some freshly picked kale, which I've grown on my allotment, which is even better. So I will go through the ingredients before we get cooking. Now it takes about 30 minutes to cook altogether, and it serves 4 people. So you will need 8 sausages, 1 onion, 2 garlic cloves, 800 grams of tinned chopped tomatoes, 600 millilitres of chicken stock, 100 grams of kale, 800 grams of tinned butterbeans, 4 sprigs of thyme, and some oil to fry the sausages in. Now, first things first is to cook the sausages. Now, that takes about 10 minutes, so whilst they're cooking, I'm going to put the kettle on so there's some nice hot boiling water ready for the stock, and then we can get cracking with the rest. As you can probably hear, the sausages are cooking really well. They're just starting to brown now. I actually had to close the shed door just because it's getting a bit windy now and it kept blowing the stove out. So I just closed the shed door. And what I'm doing while the sausages are cooking and the kettle's on is I'm just going to chop up the onion and the 2 garlic cloves ready for the next stage. Now, my dad actually grew this onion, so there's another homegrown produce going into the pot. The wind's died down, so I've risked opening the door, but the sausages are all cooked. The 2 garlic cloves and the 1 onion have been chopped up ready. The kettle sounds like it's just going to boil. So what I'm going to do is get the cubes ready for the stock. The sausages now need to go into a casserole pan, and I hope this is big enough. So the sausages have to go into there with the onion and the garlic, and they need to cook for about 5 minutes. Now, what I like to do with the sausages is I like to chop them up just so they're easy to manage when you're eating them, but you don't have to chop them up, you can keep them whole, but I like to chop them up just because then it's more like a soup. and you can have it in a bowl with some nice crusty bread, but that's entirely up to you. I just prefer to chop them up. So I'm going to chop them up, put them in the casserole pot with the onion and the garlic and let them cook for 5 minutes, and then hopefully the kettle would have boiled by then. So let's chop them up. Get that on there. So that's the onions and the garlic and the sausages all in the casserole pot, and the kettle's boiled. So the next thing to do is to get the stock ready. So you need 600 millilitres of chicken stock. Ooh, there. Give it a nice stir, just so it can all dissolve. And then what you want to do is put the chicken stock into the casserole pot with the chopped tomatoes and the butter beans, with 4 sprigs of thyme. Now I just so happen to have some thyme just outside the shed, so I will get them in a minute and put them in the casserole pot last. So that's all dissolved. That's been cooking for 5 minutes. Now it's just a matter of putting it all into the casserole pot. So that's the chicken stock. The 2 tins of chopped tomatoes, and the butter beans, and I think it's just going to fit in there. I might actually have to leave the last tin of butter beans out because I think it will overflow it. But obviously the butter beans are optional. You can add any beans. For instance, you could add borlotti beans, which you've grown on the allotment. Now I actually have some, but I've dried them over winter. So if you have dried borlotti beans, then you obviously need to soak them either overnight or for a good few hours before you use them. But butter beans are delicious. I love butter beans. So I'm going to turn the heat up on that. I'm going to pop the lid on for a while, but I will get some 4 sprigs of thyme just to put in there as well, just to give it a little bit of flavour. And then that needs to cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then it's ready to eat, and I just can't wait. Let's get the thyme. The last ingredient to add to the casserole will be some kale. Now I'm actually growing it on the allotment, which is just perfect because it's freshly picked and it's delicious. Now the variety I'm growing is a curly kale, and it's actually called Scarlet, so it's a lovely purple colour. So I'll be adding this to the casserole, so I might just cut this whole stalk here. Now kale doesn't take very long to cook. It's a little bit like spinach, a little bit like Swiss chard. So once the casserole's had about 10 to 15 minutes cooking, I'll add this in for the last 3 minutes, and then it'll be ready to serve. But the first thing I'm going to do is give it a good clean, because I don't really want any slugs or snails or any insects in my casserole. So just remember to give your fresh veg a good clean before you go to eat it. So that's the kale all cleaned, and the casserole's been on for about 10 minutes. What I like to do with the kale is I like to cut away the stems. Now you can eat them, it's just I find that they're a little bit tough in the casserole. So all I do is lay them flat and then cut down the stems. So you're just left with the side leaves. Now I find that they're perfect for the casserole. They are delicious. Now you need about 100 grams, but obviously you can put in however much you want. I really like kale, so I'm going to put as much as I can in, as much as this pot will let me put in. Now the kale will shrink down in size. Which is good news, because I've picked the smallest casserole pot ever. So what I'll do once I've cut these stems off is pop the kale leaves into the casserole pot and then cook it for about 3 minutes, and then it is ready to eat. And I'm going to serve it with some nice crusty white bread, and it's just coming up to lunchtime, which is perfect. So let's get this kale in. So that's that. I told you it was so simple to make, and it's so easy, and it's made even better that you can use stuff that you've grown on your allotment. The sun is trying to come out a little bit, which is just lovely, so I can sit here in the sun and eat my favourite meal. Now I hope you enjoyed watching that, and that you can go out and try this recipe, because it really is delicious. But for now, I'm certainly going to enjoy eating it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.